I'm relieved.
And I'm Marcy. And it's the end.
Down all the dusty road we go. We are the Watchers in the Basements. Ladies and gentlemen, we are covering the last episode, I think, of the series, Yellowstone. They kept saying season finale, but as I did research across the dark web and the open web, it says season finale, but it concludes with season 5, they say. So we're gonna operate as if this is the end. If it is the end, I think we got a lot of closure from a lot of characters. Um, some closures of characters that didn't show up that we thought would show up. We'll talk about that as the show goes on today. But I'm Franklin. This is Marcy, and today's episode was called "Life." I think "Life is a Promise" or "Promise." Yeah, "Life is a Promise," and a lot of symbolic meaning behind that episode today. Marcy, overall, what was your thoughts on this episode? Did it satisfy you, or what's going
I
on?
will say yes. Overall, it was satisfying. Some loose ends I would have liked to have seen tied up, but overall, I really liked it. Much better than last week because we only had like less than 5 minutes of Travis this time. So we are good. It wasn't the Taylor Sheridan show today. So yes. Hi, M Moves.
What's up, Moves? Everybody, King B Johnson.
Hey.
Everybody that's in the podcast today watching, people who are streaming, thank y'all so much. Yeah, it was. I would say it was much better than last week's episode for sure. I got a lot of closure with certain characters. The runtime I thought was adequate too for it being the end of a 5-season run. I do have questions of a few storylines that never came back. Few characters, few corporations that never showed up. Last week you had market equities. From what I remember, there was a search warrant that was conducted on in their offices.
Yeah.
That led to nowhere. We didn't see them in this episode. Marcy, what was your thoughts with market equities? This season as a whole, and primarily in this episode and season finale.
Yeah, I would have. That's one of the loose ends that I was talking about. Like, I would have liked to see something happen with market equities, somehow them tying it back to them, but it just pretty much comes down to Sarah Outwood and Jamie are going to be the scapegoats for it. Even though market equities, as we kind of saw, like they didn't directly tell Sarah to kill John, right? Like they didn't order that hit or anything like that. So they weren't culpable with that. But I would have just liked to see market equities get in trouble for something, right? Like we're kind of tired of corporations just getting away with shit. But I would have liked to see like more with that. That just kind of fizzled out at the end of at last episode where the search warrant and then wanting to search Sarah's office, and then that was it. No more market equities that we've seen. So womp womp.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Like we find out through the off season of this show that Kevin Costner is not coming back, right? So you would think you would get a lot more context of the adversary in the show, primarily market equities.
Yeah.
More story time, more story developing about that, more closure regarding that company, and for a company to be the bane of the Duttons' existence for the better part of 3 seasons now,
Yeah.
and not even have them even mentioned in this episode was very, very odd to me. And again, like the questionable writing and thought process of that writing room when it comes to this show, when it comes to a lot of the major storylines, to not have that in this finale. And like I said, it seems like it's going to be the end of this story. It's bothersome to me. I don't understand it. And it's like when you take away a big chess piece off the board, like John Dutton / Kevin Costner, you need to even that out with the person that John Dutton or John Dutton's family was fighting against, which is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. To
Yeah.
not even mention a multi-billion-dollar corporation that this family's been fighting for the better part of 3 seasons, I thought was kind of asinine, and that left a lot of unresolved feelings for me regarding that part of the storyline.
Yeah.
You could have you could have taken the 5 minutes of Travis out of this show and added 5 minutes of market equity just to tie up that loose end.
Right. It could have been as much as like them having another scene where it's the boardroom, market equities, and they're watching the news again like they typically do, and they're just kind of, saying that, Jamie like was the man behind everything, and they could have been like, well, okay, like great, that is resolved for us or whatever. Like we don't have to worry about that problem anymore moving on. Like that would have, I think, at least been a little bit more closure than we got about market equities, because you're right. They've been fighting them since what, season 2, season 3? It's been like the big bad that they've been fighting, along with like, Thomas, and the Broken Rock tribe. So yeah, in the end, it just came down to like who did everybody want to get his, and it was Jamie. So that's who we that's the enemy that we saw go down in this episode.
Yeah, I want to start this trend of talking about the things that were unresolved before we get to the things that were resolved and explained in the show. Another unresolved storyline I want to talk about too, and this is off the cuff because I was watching the marathon last night, and I watched the episode where Sarah Atwood and Jamie are fucking in the bathroom stall of this bar, and Beth follows them into the bathroom and takes a picture of Sarah Atwood's driver's license.
Oh yeah.
That's not her real name. It's not her real name. She finds that out. She I think she tells Jamie about it as well, but that part never came up either. And another writing fail for me is that if you're gonna kill this character and have detectives launch an investigation, how in the fuck that's not that storyline does not come up, that's not her real name, the person in the person of interest, that's obstruction of justice, or the person that's connected to the launching the killing of John Dutton with this black ops group or this assassination group or whatever, to find out that's not even a real name and that never come up in this finale or the last 2 episodes, I thought was weird too.
I hadn't even thought of that because I haven't seen that episode in a while. So yeah, you're right. That is a big loose end, and more loose ends we'll talk about when we talk about Jamie. But yeah, the detectives leave a lot to be desired on this show. Like Dateline detectives, they are not.
And one more thing I want to talk about too is the Native American group. So we saw in the first half of season 5, part A, the leader of the Native American group was fighting with another person who was trying to become leader of the reservation. I can't remember her name, but it pretty much came down, and like the Native American reservation was split between who was on leadership with this group. And to not even mention that, like, is the race ongoing? Did it just pause? Like, what? I didn't know what was going on with that too, because she was in a lot of season 5 part A, and then we don't get a mention of her in season 5 part B. And especially with the pipeline, that's the pipeline issue that was developing in the story with the Native American group, as well, to the acquisition of the Yellowstone. They don't talk about the impending race between leadership of the Native American group. From what I remember, that was never resolved. Was that ever resolved, and I just missed it, or what are your thoughts on that, Marcy?
Yeah, great question. I think that is also an unresolved thing where it just kind of fizzled out because they were like, well, we only have so many episodes and so much story we want to tell, that all felt by the wayside. We got barely any like really good like storylines with Thomas, with Mo, with any of the tribe this half of the season. Even like in this episode where they're like, I guess, hiding the pipe for the pipeline. I'm like, yeah, that's great. Good for you. don't you think like these multi-billion-dollar corporations are just gonna like buy some new pipe and just chalk it up to like the cost of doing business? Like, oh shit, like somebody fucked with our pipe. We can just buy more pipe. We're worth like so many billions of dollars. So that's more story that I would have wanted to see fleshed out. At this point, we don't know. There's been some talks that it's continuing with a focus on Beth and Rip. I would like for it to continue somehow, like with a focus on the reservation and like that leadership and like more of those stories. I think would be just really, really interesting. And then see like what they can do with the land. Obviously, the land's going to be protected, but like what are just some more like really important stories that could come out of that? I think that was a miss. I don't know if it's just because they just didn't feel like writing it anymore, or again, they were just like, we have so much story that we want to tell, not a lot of episodes. But yeah, that was also unresolved for me.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to like prioritizing what's important. You could have taken out a lot of the cowboy shit this season, a lot of the Travis shit this season, and really focus on wrapping up the storylines, because these are dilemmas and conflicts that you created as a writer, and to not have closure for those storylines. And like you said, maybe it does come about a Beth and Rip series, right? But again, with the location of Beth and Rip, they're 40 miles outside of Dillon now, so it's like how relative will they be to the story if they're living off way west of Montana, way west of Bozeman? I don't know how much connection will make sense. They seem so isolated. Same with Kayce and his family. They seem very isolated as well with the 300 cows, and they just seem to have a nice, peaceful life going. So there's a lot of misses. So in this series, and it makes me wonder. I know we just finished up this episode, but I wonder a week from now, a month from now, how fans will reflect from this season/series finale, and how Taylor will be remembered as a writer with this episode and with this series. Moving forward, let's talk about the episode. So today's episode opens up with the Native American group pretty much eradicating all the pipelines that were implemented throughout their land, and they show the big bulldozers, the big anchors, and pretty much the whole tribe takes out all the pipes and they throw it into the water. Talk about that scene, Marcy, and what were your thoughts about that opening scene of this episode?
It was great. It took me like a couple seconds to see what was going on because like my eyes just don't work very well anymore. So it reminded me of like Game of Thrones where everything's so dark. And I'm like, what is happening? I'm like, okay. They're like, it's the tribe. They're on horseback. Okay. It's like pipe. They're getting rid of the pipe. Awesome. Like, good for you, dudes. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was great. And like Thompson, what we're talking about, like, yeah, like maybe they won't find it, but like that doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily stop them. They have enough money to resume this, but it will get people talking about it. And then when you've got people talking about it, then you have more attention to it. And where we are at this point, a lot of people like very interested about just kind of injustices that are happening to people everywhere, including and especially Native American tribes. So I think it was like a good tactic for them. But again, it's a huge corporation. They can just buy some new pipe. But I kind of saw Thomas's vision of like, this will get people talking about it. It's not necessarily going to stop like the construction.
Yeah, I thought the timeline and rearranging of that was kind of weird. I think it would have made more sense if Kayce and Rainwater make the deal to sell the Yellowstone to the Native Americans, and then they go in and distract the pipe from the land as a final fuck you to the state and to this corporation. Like, hey, this is our land, we're taking it back. To like do it in the beginning of the episode and pretty much have no plan to afterwards, if the state was to come back or the corporation was to come back to lay down more pipe, because at that point, Rainwater had no idea that they could even like save the land and keep it for themselves. So I thought I thought that was out of place. I thought that should have been after Kayce and Rainwater making that deal. It would have finalized that storyline of the Native Americans finally getting their land back, and the white people or the government or whatever you want to call them not being able to get the last word.
True. And then also, like, what would have happened if they would have gotten caught, right? Like, if for some reason they're like, there's a lot of like eyes on this whole pipeline thing, right? It's like a hot topic, hot button issue. Why don't we like have some kind of security? I know it's like way out there, it's like remote, but like, what if somehow they got found out and they got in trouble for it? Like, that would have also been like a problem. And I was like, please don't let that happen. Please don't let these like lights come on and like all these like crazy security snipers come out and like kill these dudes. So I'm glad that's not what happened.
Yeah, I mean, it would have made sense too to have more, I guess, appearances by the new governor. I mean, this is something that he would have had not a say in, but like he should have at least addressed. And we saw the new governor 3 episodes ago, and yeah, they talked about they talked about the airport and the eminent domain, but they never talked about the pipeline. And that was something I feel like that should have been discussed more with the governor, inheriting all of what John was dealing with. We never saw him again. I thought that was kind of weird too.
We didn't. And then after Jamie's speech, when the news people are talking about it, they're like, yeah, Montana's without a leader, and like maybe like a new leader emerged. And I was like, you do have a leader. Like your lieutenant governor became your governor. Like you do have a leader. What is happening? Yeah. So
I've never seen a show eradicate a political head.
We forgot about him
all in one episode.
He went off to Landman. He's in Landman now. We don't even know about him anymore.
I guess so. Another character that I want to talk about too, that I won't say she got closure, but I mean she has more of a path now, and that's Teeter. And Teeter, again, she lost the love of her life. She's wondering, she's trying to figure out what she's going to do in life moving forward. And she talks to Jimmy about, hey, how does it feel to work on the 4-6s with Travis? And Jimmy pretty much tells her, hey man, it's something you just have to experience yourself. It's different. I'll just say that. And how I took that is that we might get Teeter in a 4-6 series as a recurring character. That's what I got from it, and the back and forth with Travis and Teeter and all of that. What was your thoughts with Teeter's character and the decision of her wanting to go to the 4-6s?
I'm glad that that's where she ended up and didn't just kind of go off and drift off and like be by herself and just try to like find the next thing that she was going to do. I think right now it's important for her to just be around at least somebody that she knows, just because again, she's had such a traumatic loss. And before she came to the Yellowstone again, she'd just been wandering around from place to place. So I'm glad she's with someone she knows. I'm glad she's with Jimmy. And I'm like, if we finally end up getting a 4-6 show, I think it was announced like 3 years ago. If we finally end up getting it, I would not mind seeing Teeter again. I think she definitely grew on a lot of people. I think when she was introduced, a lot of people were like, who is this weirdo? But I think she really won people over.
I think so too. She's become one of my favorite characters. Just a sporadic, lively character. I mean, we talked about this too a couple weeks ago. I hate that they killed off her lover. I think it took a lot of spunk out of her character. She's one of the few things that made the show fun. Her personality, her added fixture to the bunkhouse. I thought she was a great character, and to kill that spirit of that character with that death of her lover, I thought was crass. I thought was pointless. I understand it. You could have had a storyline where they could have left together to the 4-6s, and then you have a bridge of Yellowstone of two characters come from Yellowstone to the 4-6s to join Jimmy to fortify that cast. That to me would have made more sense.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if Denham didn't want to be part of the show anymore. Maybe there was, I don't know. Maybe there was infighting or discussions or disagreements. Who knows? But I think that part would have made more sense to have them as a pair join the 4-6s with Jimmy. But
I wonder if
yeah,
that was a decision made, because after Colby's death, obviously we see how it affects Teeter, but we also see how it affects Ryan, right? Like, that's his name, right? His best friend. Yes, Ryan.
yeah, Ryan.
Sorry. So we see how it affects him. Like, again, he's still dealing with that loss, and I think if Colby were still alive, they again might be looking for something to do together. And maybe Taylor wanted there to be some way for Ryan to, again, like do what he ended up doing, was just kind of like go off on your own, go off and chase, the woman that you'd love to go to Texas. So I wonder if part of the decision to kill Colby off was like, we need Ryan to then be free to go and find something else on his own and not feel like he's got to stay with his best friend. I don't know. I agree with you. I don't love that they killed Colby off. I think if you wanted Ryan to then, decide that he wants to go off on his own, you could have still done that, keeping Colby alive, right? Like, tons of people every single day all around the world decide that they want to go pursue something that they want to and leave their best friends. Like, their best friend doesn't have to die for them to be like, oh, okay, like now I can go pursue this. So yeah, I think it was a mistake to kill off Colby. Like, it was not necessary. Like, you already had a sad about John dying, and now you like made everybody really sad about killing off Colby. So
I couldn't say any better myself, Mars. Yeah, so we shall see. I mean, we don't have much background of what the 4-6 is going to be about. I mean, I know it'll be in North Texas, but we still don't know. I mean, outside them branding cattle and riding horses and Travis talking shit to Jimmy, I don't know what else is going to be added to that story. But I guess we'll see. I'm just glad Teeter looks like she's going to be joining the cast whenever that does come out. If it does come out, I mean, we'll see.
I'm wondering, since kind of like where the 4-6s isn't too far from Odessa, I'm just wondering how Taylor's going to figure out how to like tie those two together, because that would be coming like somehow, and it would somehow be like Travis is like, he connects them somehow, like he's the cowboy guy, but he also like knows the oil people, and that's how they connect, and he's like old friends with Tommy. Like, he would do some shit like that and then have like crossover episodes. So we'll see. We shall see.
Landman's 4-6's crossover. I mean, hey, I'm here for it. If I can get Teeter and Tommy in the same scene, that'd be great. That'd be fun.
That would be interesting.
So going back to the duration of this episode, so Beth has a conversation with Rip about, I guess a ranch that she saw online that she wanted to, pick Rip's brain about. It's 7,000 acres, 40 miles outside of Dillon. And, Rip asks a few questions about the land and all of that. And he seems to like it. It's away from people. It's away from tourists. There's no distractions as far as like future commercial development. So yeah, it'll be a good land. And Rip finds out that Beth already bought it. So it's like, okay, good. I'm glad you like it. Well, I bought it already.
But that made me laugh out loud, and I'm like, that must be nice, because like I'm not even looking for a new house, but I was like on Zillow this morning, as one does when you're bored on a Sunday morning, just scrolling through Zillow, and I was like, oh, like this would be nice. Like, again, like I already have a house, I don't need another one, but it would be nice to just be able to like look online and just be like, oh yeah, I just bought that house, babe. Like, and not just like this house. I bought this house with land and this ranch for you to like have your cows on. So I guess that is gold in life, to be able to be like, look at a ranch online and buy it.
Yeah, you know what? Does does Beth work? What's up, Trisha? Good seeing you. That's your back. So Trisha says, did y'all notice that Travis was at double R and not the 4 6s? I did not notice that. What is double R? Is that
He's,
a ranch?
I think he's on like different ones. Like he's not always at the 4 6s. And I
Okay,
think like Jamie like goes around with him. Yeah.
gotcha. No, I was gonna ask. That's a very expensive plot of land or acres of land that Beth bought. She doesn't work anymore, right? Like, how does she? Does she just have a nest egg? Like, I don't think she has any money coming in.
She probably has a really good nest egg from like her previous life in corporate America. Like she's got that nest egg. And remember, Kayce had told her, like, don't put any of your money into anything. So she's got her own money. And then she probably got some kind of like other inheritance aside from the Yellowstone and the land that she probably got. So she's got to have some money saved away. And then also, like, she probably like took out a loan for it as well. So
Makes sense. Makes sense.
she's got that generational wealth. Even if they were cash poor, they still have some of that generational wealth.
Oh man, gotta love that white privilege, generational wealth, baby. Love it. Jamie Dutton, man, the man of the hour of this show of this episode today. So he's being seen at his house. He's rehearsing his speech over and over again. He's practicing his speech to talk to the public, to the media, about how Sarah Atwood was in cahoots with market equities, about taking a hit on his father and his father's legacy and what it means for Montana, blah 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 blah. And yeah, he seemed to have it down packed, right? And talk about that scene, man. Like, how did you feel watching that and seeing him rehearse that over and over again in the shower and like as he's getting dressed to start his day?
I agree with Trisha. I wanted Jamie's ending to be more. But first, what I thought when I saw that scene, it kind of reminded me of the last season, last few episodes of Succession, where we see the siblings are getting ready. And I think it was for Logan's funeral, where you see Roman just kind of getting ready for like the day and just kind of going about it. So it kind of reminded me of that. And this is kind of like Cowboy Succession anyway. But I'm just kind of like, you smarmy bastard. I hope you don't like charm and smarm your way out of this, which we know he didn't. We'll talk about later, but I think he was just so confident that like, yes, like I did it. I'm going to like give them the speech of my political career and everyone will believe me. And too bad Sarah had to die, but now I'm like set up to be the governor, right? Like everybody has faith in me and they see me as a leader. So it was just kind of like typical Jamie like smarminess. Um, so the end was somewhat satisfying to me, but like Trisha said, I also would have liked to see more. Yeah, exactly. The scene just reminds you how fake he is, how rehearsed he is. And when he doesn't rehearse, that's when we've seen him just kind of fall apart.
Yeah, it's I'm so conflicted on Jamie, man, because he's a piece of shit. I'm not even gonna try to like condone the things that he's done, right? But when you look at his origin story and look how Taylor wrote that character, um, he was never fully ingratiated into that family. And I think him not fully being ingratiated into that family and accepted, he's always had that chip on his shoulder and that axe to grind. Whether it's early on the onset of that series, subconsciously or consciously, he's always had that axe to grind. And
Yeah.
I think moving forward, how John treated him and the family secret of him not being a true Dutton, and combine that with the relationship he had with Beth, and with Beth being pregnant, all of that, it vilified Jamie a lot coming up, and part of me feels sorry for him, but at the same time, like, you're a grown man. At,
Yeah.
at this point, you made your bed. The decision you made moving forward. the decisions that you made, having your father taken out, the man that you called father for the majority of your life taken out, the decision that you made of, killing that reporter, these decisions you made as an adult, those decisions you have to live with, and those
Yeah.
have those you we can't, at some point in time, as a man, as an adult, we can't let our origin story define who we're going to be in the future. And I
Right.
think Jamie's example and Jamie's story is a constant reminder that, um, being a being a part of your upbringing and like your surroundings, if you let that be your story moving forward, and you don't make strides to better yourself and to make better decisions, especially as a man smart as he is, um, at the end of the day, all that responsibility falls on you, and you can't blame your childhood anymore. You can't blame, daddy didn't love me enough. Why I ain't know my father and all this kind of stuff. You still make conscious decisions to wreck that family and to destroy the Dutton future of and people who are innocent bystanders, like Kayce. Like, you say you love Kayce, but all the decisions you made moving forward, you put Kayce life in danger. You put Tate's life in danger, your
Yeah.
sister-in-law life in danger. Like, so, it's a very hot button topic when it comes to Jamie's demise and Jamie's character arc throughout the series. I can see both sides of it, but like Trisha said, I was very unsatisfied with his demise. And I know, since we're talking about it, let's go ahead and just flow into that now. Um, Post funeral, Beth leaves the ranch. She's hightailing it into Bozeman, and she's pretty much hiding out at Jamie's house. As Jamie leaves the press conference, of the speech he rehearsed for hours, it seems like, he gets attacked by Beth, in his own house, and then you have a pretty much a showdown, to the death between both the characters. Marcy, what was your thoughts, of that scene, and and how did you think it was going to end, and are you satisfied with Jamie's demise?
Not satisfied. Like you said, she just kind of hightails it out of there. Rip has to, it takes Rip a while to figure it out. And then he runs to his truck like he's got to go to the bathroom. That just made me laugh because I'm like, he was just standing there and he's like, oh, gotta go, gotta go. So that just kind of was hilarious. Yes, the disrespect we can talk about later. I also agree. Beth was just kind of doing things on her own and not just incorporating Rip, I guess, because he's part of her plan. But damn, girl, you gotta let him know a little bit. Yeah, that plan could have backfired on her. In the end, I guess it worked out the way she wanted it to, and they like have this epic fight and they pretty much beat the shit out of each other, and she sprays bear spray in his eyes, and we think he's going to get away, right? But then obviously she comes back and she hits him, and we think he'll be able to control her, and like he starts choking her, and then we see like Rip obviously save the day like we know he's going to do. But yeah, yes, he's dead, which is like great, you've avenged John, but wouldn't a punishment like jail be worse for Jamie? Like, he's a little bitch. He would not be able to handle jail. That would be like hell on earth for him. Like, that would have been like satisfying for me. So I don't know. And then it leaves lots of loose ends. Like, did they think that the detectives aren't going to be like, well, are there like security cameras? Yeah. I thought that too. Like, I'm like, oh, it's just going to end with them like killing each other. And it's like Hamlet type of ending where they all die. But it's not satisfying because of that. But then also like security cameras, not just at Jamie's house, but like neighbors' security cameras. Um, Security cameras everywhere to see like, oh, like there's Jamie and like, oh, there's another man that's coming into Jamie's house and also leaving Jamie's house in like this truck. Like, we need to follow up on like who was driving this truck. Oh, it was Rip Wheeler, who's married to Beth Dutton. So again, like, Taylor, have you seen any detective shows ever? Like Dateline, have you ever seen it? So yeah, like, I would also still think that there's some kind of surveillance on Jamie's house just so they can cover their bases. Like, these things just happened. Like, there's still probably a lot of eyes on Jamie's house and on Jamie's movement. So I'm just kind of like, this could have really backfired on you, Beth. Like, did you think that detectives are just going to be satisfied with the story that you told them and they're going to be like, oh, like, cool, like, we believe her. Okay, like, yeah, he was kind of like, he seemed shady, so we're just going to believe her and just kind of not do any other kind of detective work. So I'm just kind of like, okay, sure, we're just going to disregard all of those other things that could have happened.
That scene pretty much encompassed, I think, how how Taylor felt about this season. It just came off like, man, let's just wrap this shit up, dog. I'm ready to go focus on Landman. Billy Bob Thornton. I'm trying to win Billy Bob Thornton an Emmy. I'm trying to get ready for Four Sixes. I'm trying to get ready for Agency or wherever shows he has going on. It just seemed like he was just ready to wrap this shit up. And as you're watching it, I don't know. I'm not in the writing room, but I would think the writers are watching this play out on air and saying to themselves, "Fuck, we forgot about that part. Shit, that didn't really make much sense." Damn.
Nosy neighbors, like, nobody's gonna hear all this commotion, especially after somebody was just gunned down not too far from here. You think Montana doesn't have nosy neighbors? Like, if it had happened like somewhere dangerous, like New York City, people are gonna be like, I didn't see shit, right? Because you know to mind your business in like a dangerous city. If you're in like freaking Montana, they don't know how to mind their business. They're gonna be all nosy, looking out their windows and like telling the cops what they've seen. So not believable.
But not just that too. Like just the episode before, the detective was talking about getting a search warrant and searching Jamie's house. What happened with that? Like normally they turn that around pretty quickly and to not even like have any like notion about that or that not come up again. I thought was kind of weird too. And like you said before with the Black Ops, they followed Sarah from Jamie's house and took out the game. Like headshot to the face and chest. Like you don't think that they're watching Jamie just in case that shit don't come out, or in case Jamie has files of the transactions that Sarah had, paying the Black Ops company to take out John. It just seems like Jamie's too important of a political asset to not have any eyes on him during this investigation. I just thought it was very, very odd.
The governor's house was just guarded by that one idiot security guard in the SUV. So, like, I think we're just like giving them too much credit, right? Like, maybe Montana doesn't care about their elected officials. Sorry, Montana, it's just a show. I'm sure, like, in real life, you care about your elected officials. But on the show, like, again, like the governor's mansion, like, you lose all power. And, like, the guy's like, oh, big deal. Like, nothing's happening. So they don't even care, like, the attorney general, somebody just got killed after being at his house. Like nobody's going to be like watching and like protecting or like watching to see if you're responsible for it. Like, no, we're just going to just forget about it. Like we don't need to like have a stakeout or have eyes on you or have anybody follow you.
Right. Yeah. That's very frustrating, man. Very like watching this episode gave me Succession vibes, like how once the father died in Succession, I would just pretty much hate watching from there on out. And once John died, it was Symmetry. I'm pretty much just hate watching it. I just need to see it to the end, and that's kind of how I felt about these last few episodes.
I'm sorry.
These last few episodes and not.
I was just like had some beers and whiskey with Rip, and they're like, "Let's just fucking write this ending. Who gives a shit? We're still getting paid."
That's pretty good, Trish. I know front. That's pretty fucking good. Yeah, it's very poor writing, man. Very poor writing, and for as much money that's put into this production, I expected more. It felt like the last few episodes felt like a straight home to DVD type of ending. Like, it didn't feel good. It didn't feel well thought out. It just,
on the Great American Country channel, like not even like a good channel, like on Great American Country. Yes, yeah. I mean, overall, like it was a decent end to the show, but like Trisha mentioned, for a show that was so beloved, and was just kind of like so good at one point, just kind of like shit the bed a little with this ending. Like it could have been better, and we can obviously talk about like Kevin Costner leaving, and that probably obviously put a wrench in things. Like Taylor probably had a completely different ending for the show. Then we had like writers and actors strikes. So like we get it, right? But also step up your game because you're also getting paid millions to entertain us, and we were not entertained to the point where we feel like we should have been.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Kayce and where he's at in this episode. So last episode, he comes up with the grand idea to pretty much sell the land to Native Americans and pretty much give it to them the same rate that the Duttons bought it for way back 140 years earlier for I think $1.25 an acre. I think is what
they didn't buy that shit. They took that land, and that's how much the land would be going for if they'd bought it.
Which I thought it was weird too that wasn't mentioned. Like I'm surprised nobody corrected them on that. Like, yeah, you took the land. You didn't buy it from the Native Americans in 1883. You took it, but I thought that was kind of weird as well too. Yeah. So Kayce has an idea of meeting with rainwater and pretty much selling the land to the Native Americans for $1.25 an acre. Pretty much is the worst land deal in modern history, right? But it's done for the right reasons. It gives the land back to Native Americans. Since the Duttons can't afford the inheritance tax, it gives complete control for them to where no development in the future can be on that land. No housing developments, commercial developments, nothing like that. Kayce only wants two things. One is that there's no land, no buildings or commercial stuff fixed on that land or built on that land, and then the property, the I think 5,000 acres that Kayce kind of has pieced out for him and his wife and his son is untouched and it goes to them, and Rainwater pretty much agrees. What was your thoughts on that scene and yeah, what were your thoughts?
It was great. I think that's one of the scenes on this episode that made me the most emotional because you know that how difficult that was for Kayce, right? Like he definitely wanted to be free of the Yellowstone and like that curse pretty much that his family had had. So like, you know, that's something that he wanted, but it's still difficult for him because you still have like these generations of expectations of always keeping the land. Like, you know, you're doing away with that, but also just to kind of see the emotion, not only for Kayce, but also for Thomas and for Mo, right? Like they were like, is this really happening? Because they talked about like, we can't afford to buy this from you. Like only big corporations could afford this. And then to hear Kayce's plan and to know like, okay, we're going to get our land back. Like, it was very good acting that they did with just their faces. And you could see how much it meant to them. And then just Mo kind of stepping away. I thought he was going to step away to cry, but then he just, you know, started like singing or, you know, chanting. And I was like, oh, like that's very beautiful that they get that because obviously it doesn't happen a lot in real life that they're able to have that. So I think that was for me one of the better scenes of this episode that really kind of like touched me more than any of the other scenes from tonight.
I agree. It was definitely for me. It was probably the highlight of the episode. To see, look, let's be frank here, right? Like this is about a very affluent white family whose ancestors took this land from the indigenous people, and for 7 generations they've made a living off this land. They've made money off this land. They are one of the famous families in Montana. So there's a lot of privilege with this family with John Dunn's character, and I think the show kind of gleams over the fact that the Dunns come from privilege, and they are the one percenters when it comes to families in Montana, and to for and I would give Taylor credit on this as a white writer that Taylor is, and I'm not sure what his writing room is looking like, but to be the head writer and producer, director, and creator of the show, and to really, you know, give the indigenous peoples, the characters in this show, the Native Americans in the show, a happy ending, and acknowledge that what happened in 1883 and how fucked up it was in 1883, and how in 1923 you see Rainwater's ancestors and Native Americans suffer, and from the Catholic Church, mistreating the Native American women, killing them, and all that. It's a lot of just fucked up shit that happens to Native Americans, right? In 1883 and 1923, and to acknowledge that in Yellowstone, and to give them a semblance of a happy ending, I thought Taylor owed that to that storyline, to the Native American people, and I'm glad that amongst my bitching about all the different storylines of this show, to at least have that owed to us and owed to the Native Americans people in this series, I thought was responsible of him, and it's nice to see that he does understand the plight that Native Americans, even in today's time, are going through.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I'm also glad that they got a happy ending, but obviously that's tied to Kayce's happy ending, and it just kind of goes to show that Kayce was able to get away, and wasn't his first time being able to get away from the Yellowstone and from John. He'd already done it once before. How different would this story have been if Jamie had also been able to get away from John and from the Yellowstone, right? Because we've talked about like Jamie and like how he's done all these terrible things, but like you mentioned, a lot of it is because of his childhood, right? Like, so he pretty much always ended up doing what John wanted him to do, instead of what he wanted to do. So in a way, John kind of like shaped Jamie, gave Jamie trauma, and then like Jamie ends up this way and ends up killing John. And when I just rewatched some of the earlier episodes a few weeks ago, it was just interesting because, John was talking about like, Jamie can't be what I need him to be. Like, Jamie's not evil like Beth. Like, Beth can do some of my bidding because she has it in her. Like, Jamie doesn't have it in him. And oh, if he only knew how much in him he was going to have it. So, how much of that was because of John and the trauma that John inflicted on his kids, right? Like, that's not easy to forget. Like, we know the trauma that he inflicted on Kayce, right? Like, he essentially made him go away, and it was like, you need to like have Monica have an abortion, and that's traumatic to be told that. John also inflicted a lot of trauma on Beth and on Jamie. So how much of that was because of everything and wanting to like keep this land? Like, yes, you want to keep your land, but to the point of like dying and corrupting your children and your family. I don't know.
And I'm glad you said that too, because John is not a perfect character in some respects. He's not a good character. He's not a good man in some respects. I think the mark of a good man is putting your family first, right? And I think the legacy of John Dutton, he was more concerned about the legacy of what he left behind, more so of the well-being of his family and the state of his family. And I think that's the ambiguous part of John, and that's the part of John that people, fans alike, we talk about very conflicted characters. John Dutton, Tony Soprano. Like, these are characters are vilified, well beloved, while simultaneously are selfish characters, but conflicted characters as well. And I think the legacy of John and how John is romanticized a little bit by Beth in this episode, as well. I think shows the complexities of one John Dutton, for sure. But I'm truly happy for Kayce and Monica and Tate because, like you said, it seemed like no matter what Kayce did, he was always drawn back and pulled back to the ranch. Kayce went to war overseas. He's killed people. He's fought for his country. And with all that being said, it seems like the way that was demonstrated in the show that fighting for the ranch was way worse than fighting overseas in war. And maybe it's a curse. I mean, as you see in the different versions of this of the Dutton family in 1883 and 1923, the land seemed more of a pain in the ass than a privilege to have. And there's a lot of people who died in cold blood for this land. And I think it could have been a curse. It could have been symbolic saying, hey, this is not your land. You need to give it fucking back. And I think all that death throughout the three series that we've seen is a tall tale sign that the seven generations, the chickens came home to roost. And with all that being said, that the Native Americans finally had the final say of the land that they had for so long prior to 1883.
Yeah. And I'm like, John was so busy trying to keep his promise. And like you talked about the legacy, like those people are dead. Your family right now is alive. Your kids are alive. Like, yes, legacy is important and your ancestors are important, obviously, but those motherfuckers are dead. You're putting your living family in jeopardy for what? They don't know that you're going to lose the land. And then what happened after you died? They sold your fucking land. So, I mean, yeah, like, it's a curse, but it's also, I think, just kind of man and how like our ego like wants us to like hold on to things like legacies and place a lot of importance on things that maybe we need to rethink.
I think for me, if I was a father and if I was the patriarch of my family and my godson got kidnapped and like almost killed, if my son and my daughter had their life attempted at, that would have gave me cause to be like, you know what, I'm good. You know what's more important? The safety of my family. And for him to be like, oh no, let's kill them all and like let's keep this shit going. At that point, that's when I kind of had a disdain for John, because it's like you're
He's
more
like, fuck them
concerned about
kids.
huh?
He's like, fuck them kids.
Yeah, fuck them kids, man. Like, fuck their safety. This is my ego now. Like you fucking with the Duttons. Like, and I think that's what Kayce was so ready to run away from. Like, this shit ain't worth it, bro. Like my son almost died. My wife almost died on your ranch. Like, I almost died. Like, with all those attempts of my life, I'm not gonna sit here and like fight for this shit anymore. This is what you wanted. This is not what I want. And Kayce's story to me was probably the most, outside of the Native American storyline, was probably the most satisfying ending to see him ride to the sunset with his own initiative. Like, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm gonna make sure my wife is happy. I'm gonna get this big old plot of land. I'm gonna get my 300 cows, and we might be undermanned, but you know what? Me, my wife, and my kid are good, and we'll figure this shit out, and we'll be at peace.
And he already has employees. It looks like he already has people opening the gates for him. So you're already succeeding, Kayce.
Yeah, that's something that I'm just really, really happy for Kayce and that character. I know we didn't talk about too much about the funeral. John comes back they bring John's body back. They have a mini funeral. The bunkhouse mates, people who love John, Beth, Rip, all of them. I don't know. I thought it was kind of long, to be honest. I thought it was a long scene. You could have cut that in half and focus on
Yeah.
other scenes. What are your thoughts about the funeral just as a whole?
I agree. I mean, yes, it was great. It was symbolic, and some of it did make me a little sad or whatever. But why were they not using the excavator to dig? Rip said that they had the excavator. Like, why are you making these people dig a 6-foot hole when it's their last day? That took so long. I guess they wanted to be careful, but why mention the excavator if you're just going to have them shovel everything? Uh, so yeah, that really showed us how raw it still is for Beth, obviously, because it just happened. But if the rumors are true and we get like a continuation and a season 6 focused on Rip and Beth, how much of that is she still going to be like wrestling with? And can Beth be free like Kayce is? I don't think she can. I think that lives deeper within her. I think that takes her a little bit longer to move through, not past, right? Because I don't think you can ever like move past that. She's been through so many traumatic events. But yeah, the funeral was good, I guess. It was just, again, it was just kind of lackluster for like how important John was of a character for this show. Again, it just felt like kind of womp womp. Like Linnell was there and like the cowboys were there, but it seemed like a very kind of like, I don't know, just boring ass ending for somebody that was the main character on the show. I mean, I get that Beth didn't want to have like a big to do, which is fine. Like, but it just, again, it could have been more, like
Yeah.
just something more.
I would be remiss to say if I didn't mention that he was the governor. And I thought it would have been a good idea to showcase Montana, at least Bozeman, like the after effects of his passing. Like we saw it with the bunkmates, we saw it with the ranch, we saw it with the Beth and Kayce and Tate and Carter, but it would have been nice to see how Montana took it. There was no like backlash. It would have been nice to like see media coverage or like people in the streets like up in arms like our governor is gone. Like there was no immediate reaction or I guess fallout from his death from Bozeman or a Montana perspective, which I thought was kind of weird.
Yeah, they just showed like the news clips of it, but even those were just kind of like a lackluster. I agree. Like I would have liked to see more again, like what are the people in Montana saying or doing? Like how shady do they think this is? Like we want to see more of the reaction of the people there because this is kind of shady. Like this isn't something that happens every day to lots of governors. So yeah, I think that was maybe like a missed opportunity. Maybe if there had been more episodes, but then that would have just given Taylor more of a chance to screw things up.
Yeah, yeah. More opportunity to screw things up. That makes sense for sure. Yeah, I mean, overall, I thought the episode was fine. I mean, it was not great. Didn't leave me feeling like a sense of relief. Like, I guess my relief is more like I can move on. I can move on with my life now. I can move on with my life and focus on other shows and other things to do now, and like put this chapter behind me. I think the legacy of Yellowstone, it's kind of tarnished in a way with the fall of Kevin Costner. Same way Game of Thrones is tarnished in a way. Like like when you for a show to be great in totality, you gotta stick the landing. And if you don't
Yes.
stick the landing, it kind of tarnishes what the show was, the momentum the show built, the fan reaction, just the cultural relevance the show has created. And when you don't stick that landing, it just leaves it kind of leaves like an empty feeling in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, Yellowstone isn't one of those shows where I'll like go back and rewatch a lot, like I do with some shows that I like really, really love and are close to my heart. So I think Yellowstone will just be one of those things where it's kind of like Succession. Succession was a great show, but it's not something I want to revisit all the time because it is so traumatic and like stresses me out. So I think Yellowstone will be the same. Like I might catch it if it's on TV, but it's not something I'm going to like go and seek out and be like, I want to be with the Duttons again because they brought me so much comfort. No, the opposite. I will probably like need to take a little bit of a anxiety pill after this because I'm like, okay, this is too much. Like I've lived with these people for so long, too many deaths and hits, and no, like I need to relax. I need to watch something relaxing, which would not be Landman. So, which we'll talk about later this week.
Absolutely, we'll definitely confirm a time for that this week and move on to another Taylor Sheridan creation. Yeah, I mean that is it for Yellowstone, man. I mean, thank y'all so much for joining us these last few years covering this show. If you have any thoughts about the finale or the show in general, please comment at the bottom of this podcast. Follow us on social media. Links are in the description in the box down below. Check out audio podcasts as well, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Give us a 5-star rating. And for those who watch our podcast and don't subscribe, please help us out. Subscribe. Talk about if you want us to cover anything else that we don't cover or talk about. Leave a comment as well. Rewatch the 1923 pod. That's 1923 is now on right now. Season 1 they're replaying right now on air. The new season comes out I think in February of next year, so we'll definitely be back for that as well. But again, man, thank you so much for being with us these last few years for Yellowstone. We have the NFL podcast, Watch Us Football, on Tuesday as well. And we will do Landman as well. We'll do episodes 4, 5, and 6. So for myself and for Marcy, thank y'all so much on this happy Sunday. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We are out.